The Calm Before the Storm, 3,800 words draft. The late afternoon sunlight spilled through the wide windows of the Williams estate, coating the polished floors in a warm, golden glow. The house itself was vast, elegant, and far too luxurious for the woman standing quietly before a mirror. Jessica Williams ran her fingers across the fabric of a dress hanging neatly in her wardrobe. She had dozens of gowns at her disposal, designer brands worth more than some people's yearly salaries, but her hand lingered on a simple, deep blue dress. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't extravagant. It was, in truth, her favorite. She smiled, softly as she held it up against her frame. This, she thought, is me. Jessica's beauty was quiet and natural. Her skin, rich and warm, glowed beneath the evening light. Her black hair framed her face with effortless grace, and her deep brown eyes reflected both gentleness and a quiet resilience. She didn't need heavy jewelry or layers of cosmetics to feel beautiful. Still, she often wondered if the world Nathan belonged to would ever truly accept her. From the bathroom came the sound of running water. Nathan, her husband, was finishing his shower. The faint echo of his voice humming a tune filled the air, grounding her in the comfort of his presence. Jessica slipped into the blue dress and turned to the mirror. She studied herself carefully, adjusting the neckline, brushing invisible creases from the skirt. For a moment, a shadow crossed her eyes. Would she look out of place tonight? The thought was a familiar one, and it pressed heavy on her chest. Whenever Nathan invited her to a business dinner, a gala, or a formal event, Jessica always felt the same nervous flutter. Not because she doubted Nathan's love, but because she knew how the world around him worked. The whispers, the stares, the silent judgment of people who measured worth by status, money, and background. She had lived through this before, and though Nathan's reassurances always soothed her, the quiet ache of exclusion remained. As she adjusted her earrings, Nathan emerged from the bathroom, his tall, athletic frame wrapped in nothing but a towel. Drops of water slid down his shoulders, catching the light. He stopped mid-step when he saw her. His expression softened instantly, his piercing blue eyes lighting with admiration. "That dress," he said warmly, stepping closer. "It's perfect," Jessica laughed lightly, though her reflection revealed the hesitation she felt inside. Nathan caught it at once. He always did. "What is it?" he asked, voice lower now, filled with concern. Jessica hesitated before answering. She didn't want to sound insecure, but the truth slipped out. "Nathan, do you ever think I don't belong in places like tonight? At Spago, with your colleagues, your business partners, women who walk in wearing diamonds the size of grapes?" Nathan's gaze didn't waver. He reached out and gently took her hand, lifting it to his lips with familiar tenderness. "You belong wherever you choose to be," he said firmly. "And tonight you're by my side. That's all that matters." Jessica smiled faintly, though her chest still ached. Nathan tilted her chin up so she looked directly into his eyes. "Listen to me, love. I don't care about their gowns or their whispers. I married you because you're real. Because you see me as Nathan. Not as the billionaire, not as the CEO, but as a man. And I will never let anyone make you feel less than what you are." Her eyes watered slightly, but she blinked back the tears. "You always know what to say," she whispered. "That's because it's true," Nathan replied with a gentle smile. They shared a quiet embrace, letting the silence between them speak. Jessica had no way of knowing that in just a few hours, that very dress, the one she had chosen for its simplicity, would become the center of a storm that the entire world would talk about. The Bentley glided smoothly down the streets of Beverly Hills, the fading light of day reflecting off its glossy black exterior. Jessica sat quietly beside Nathan, her hand resting in his. She glanced out the window as the car passed by palm-lined avenues, expensive boutiques and restaurants glowing with soft light. Everywhere she looked, there was wealth, glamour, perfection. It was a world she had been thrown into by love, not by ambition. And though she carried herself with grace, she sometimes felt like a guest in a place that wasn't hers. "Are you nervous?" Nathan asked, squeezing her hand lightly. Jessica gave a small laugh. "Always, but I'll be fine." "You'll be more than fine," Nathan said with quiet certainty. "And if anyone dares to make you feel otherwise, they'll answer to me." His words were meant as comfort, but there was a sharpness in them that made Jessica glance at him. His jaw was tense, his eyes locked on the road ahead. She realized then that Nathan knew far more than he let on. He knew the cruelty of his circles. He knew the prejudice lurking behind polite smiles, and he hated it. When they arrived at Spago, the valet hurried to open Jessica's door. She stepped out, the evening air cool against her skin. Nathan came around, offering his arm with the elegance of habit. Together, they walked through the glass doors. Inside, the restaurant shimmered with golden light and quiet chatter. Tables were filled with the city's elite, actors, investors, politicians, socialites, all dressed to perfection. And just as Nathan had predicted, the moment Jessica entered, heads turned. Eyes followed. Whispers began. Jessica's chest tightened, but she lifted her chin. Nathan's presence beside her was her anchor. The maitre d' greeted them with polished courtesy and led them to their usual table. For a while, everything was, calm. They ordered, laughed quietly together, and Jessica began to relax. But fate was already weaving a storm, and it would begin with a voice laced with arrogance. From across the room, Victoria Hartwell watched. She was a woman born into wealth, raised in circles where status was currency, and accustomed to having her superiority unquestioned. Dressed in a glittering silver gown, Victoria radiated the kind of confidence that came from entitlement. And to her, Jessica Williams, quiet, unadorned, and undeniably graceful, was an offense. By the time Nathan excused himself briefly to take a call, Jessica was alone at the table. She sipped her water, unaware of the predator approaching. Victoria's heels clicked sharply across the polished floor as she made her way toward Jessica, her expression cold, her eyes narrowed. The storm was about to begin. And Jessica had no idea that every second from this moment forward would change not only her life, but the lives of everyone in that room. The polished clinking of glasses, soft laughter, and background music filled Spago Beverly Hills. Diners carried on with their polished conversations, but many eyes drifted again toward the corner table, where Jessica sat alone. Her husband had only stepped away for a moment, one phone call, but in the rare silence without Nathan by her side, Jessica felt the weight of the room more heavily. She smoothed her dress, took a quiet sip of water, and reminded herself of Nathan's words. "You belong wherever you choose to be." She breathed them in like armor, but armor can only do so much when an enemy decides to strike. From across the room, Victoria Hartwell had been watching, her silver gown glittering under the chandelier's glow. She was the kind of woman who thrived on attention, and right now her attention had narrowed on Jessica. To Victoria, Jessica's quiet grace was intolerable. A billionaire's wife was supposed to flaunt, to shine, to announce herself with jewels and arrogance. Yet here sat Jessica Williams, unadorned, unshaken, her natural presence stronger than Victoria's performance. Envy twisted into contempt. With deliberate steps, Victoria left her table. Her heels struck the marble floor in sharp rhythm, echoing louder than the music in Jessica's ears as she approached. Jessica looked up politely, unsure why the woman was standing so close. Then came the words. "How dare you sit here?" Victoria said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Do you even realize where you are?" Jessica blinked, startled. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Victoria sneered, leaning closer. "This restaurant is for people who belong, not for imposters who sneak in and pretend." Her tone was loud enough for nearby tables to pause mid-conversation. Forks hovered over plates, glasses lowered quietly back onto tables. The soft hum of the restaurant shifted, attention pulling toward the confrontation. Jessica's chest tightened. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. Don't lie," Victoria cut her off. Her sharp finger jabbed toward Jessica's face. "You think a dress like that makes you fit in? You think you can sit among people of my world just because you got lucky with some man's money?" Whispers rippled across the room. Jessica's palms trembled beneath the table, but her voice stayed steady. "I'm not pretending. I have as much right to be here as you do." Her calmness, her refusal to break, only fueled Victoria's rage. "You not understand English?" she hissed, raising her voice further so half the restaurant could hear. "Or are you too uneducated to know where you don't belong?" Gasps fluttered across the tables. Phones began to rise discreetly, their cameras catching the scene. Jessica drew a slow breath. She had endured prejudice before. Silent stares, whispers, judgment hidden behind polite masks. But never had it been so open, so cruel. She met Victoria's eyes. "Please stop insulting me," she said firmly. "I don't owe you an explanation." Her strength, quiet but steady, only sharpened the insult in Victoria's mind. "You dare speak back to me?" Victoria spat. "You a nobody, daring to stand here with dignity as if you earned it? No, you will learn your place." The words were still hanging in the air when Victoria's hand flew upward. The sound of the slap cracked through the restaurant like a whip. Jessica's head jerked sideways with the impact. A burning sting spread across her cheek, but she did not cry out. She did not give Victoria the satisfaction of tears. Instead, she slowly placed her hand on her face, her eyes fixed straight ahead, unblinking. The restaurant fell into stunned silence. Every eye was on them now. Every phone was raised. The room had transformed into a stage, and the moment was forever captured. Victoria stood tall, chest heaving, her lips curved in a cruel, victorious smile. To her, the slap was proof of dominance, a declaration of power. Jessica remained still, her dignity intact even as her cheek burned. But something else was coming. Something Victoria had not anticipated, because at that exact moment, the glass doors of the restaurant opened again. Nathan Williams stepped inside, tall, commanding, dressed in a charcoal suit that seemed to darken the entire room. He carried the aura of a man who controlled more than companies. He controlled the very air around him. The second his eyes locked on Jessica, his wife, his world, his steps quickened. He saw her cheek, red and marked. He saw her stillness, the silence around her, and he understood instantly. The diners who moments before whispered in curiosity now shrank back in their seats. The air grew thick. Nathan's voice broke the silence, low but heavy enough to thunder through the room. "Who?" he said, each word sharp as a blade. "Just laid a hand on my wife." The weight of his fury shifted the entire atmosphere. Victoria's triumphant smile faltered. She stepped back, her voice suddenly shaky. She provoked me. She doesn't belong here. I was teaching her a lesson." "Teaching her a lesson?" Nathan's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked carved from stone. "You strike my wife in public and you call it a lesson?" Whispers surged again, but now they carried judgment, not for Jessica, but for Victoria. Phones kept recording, every second streaming across social media. Jessica stayed seated, her hand still lightly against her cheek. She said nothing, her silence now more powerful than words. Victoria's confidence began to crumble. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for support, but found none. The same wealthy diners who once laughed at her jokes now avoided her gaze. Nathan took one step closer. "Apologize. Now." The command rolled through the restaurant like thunder. Victoria swallowed, her face pale. She had never been spoken to like this in her world of privilege. And yet here she stood, cornered, with the weight of a billionaire's fury pressing down on her. But pride was a dangerous thing. I will not apologize, she stammered, though her voice trembled. She is nothing compared to people like us. The room gasped again. Nathan's expression darkened further, but he didn't raise his voice. Instead, his calm became more terrifying. You've just made the greatest mistake of your life, he said coldly. And at that moment, Victoria realized she hadn't just slapped a woman she thought was beneath her. She had slapped Jessica Williams, the beloved wife of Nathan. Williams, one of the most powerful men in America, and the entire world was about to see what came next. The silence after Nathan's words was heavy enough to press against every chest in the restaurant. Who just laid a hand on my wife? His voice echoed like rolling thunder. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The weight of authority in every syllable made even the servers freeze in their tracks. Jessica sat still, her cheek still marked by Victoria's hand. She did not move, did not speak. Her silence was no longer helpless. It was regal, dignified. And beside her, Nathan's fury lit the room like fire. Victoria Hartwell's lips parted, but her throat caught on air. For the first time in years, her confidence faltered. She tried to stand tall, but Nathan's piercing blue eyes pinned her in place. She provoked me, she blurted, her words rushed, desperate. She was disrespectful. She doesn't belong here. You struck her. Nathan's tone cut like a blade. In front of witnesses, in front of cameras, you dared raise a hand to Jessica Williams. A ripple moved through the crowd as Nathan spoke his wife's name. Recognition dawned in many eyes. Jessica wasn't just anyone. She was the wife of Nathan Williams, founder of Nexus Corp, a man whose decisions shaped industries and markets. And the videos, dozens of phones raised around the room, had already captured the moment. Some were streaming live. Social media feeds were already filling with clips, hashtags, and outrage. Victoria didn't realize it yet, but her downfall had already begun. Nathan took a step forward, his presence towering, his words deliberate. You will apologize to her. Right now, in front of every person here. The command rolled through the room like law. Victoria's chest rose and fell in quick breaths. She wanted to argue, wanted to cling to her pride, but the walls around her were closing in. Whispers turned sharp, judgmental. Diners who once courted, her attention now stared with thinly veiled disgust. She's nothing compared to people like us, she shouted suddenly, her voice shaking. Gasps erupted across the tables. Phones zoomed in. Nathan's expression hardened further. He leaned closer, his voice dangerously calm. You just made a mistake money cannot fix. The room shivered. Jessica finally rose to her feet. She placed a gentle hand on Nathan's arm, her touch the only thing capable of softening his fury. Her voice, though quiet, carried strength. Nathan, she whispered, it's enough. But Nathan's gaze never left Victoria. No, he said, his words firm, steady. She needs to understand that dignity cannot be bought and cruelty cannot be excused. By now the restaurant manager had hurried over, his face pale with panic. Mr. Williams, he stammered, please let us handle this privately. The situation, Nathan interrupted coldly, is that a woman dared humiliate and assault my wife in front of witnesses. Do you want to protect your restaurant, Robert? Then you will not silence this, because the world is already watching. The manager froze. He knew Nathan was right. The videos spreading online had already placed Spago at the center of a firestorm. Across the room, Victoria's mask of superiority cracked. The glittering confidence she wore like a crown was slipping away, replaced by fear. She had always believed. Her wealth, her family name, her influence would shield her. But in that moment she realized none of it mattered. Not against Nathan Williams. Not against the truth recorded on 100 cameras. The first alert buzzed on someone's phone. A live stream already had tens of thousands of viewers. Twitter feeds filled with captions. Did this woman just slap Nathan Williams's wife? Spago, Beverly Hills. Unbelievable scene right now. Respect to Jessica Williams for staying calm through this. The internet storm had begun. Jessica, still calm, spoke at last. Her voice was soft, but the entire restaurant seemed to lean into here. "I don't need her apology," she said, her eyes steady on Victoria, "because I will never give her the power to define me." The words cut deeper than any slap. They carried dignity, grace, and strength that no arrogance could destroy. The diners murmured in awe. Some clapped quietly, their admiration rising, for Jessica, who stood firm without raising her voice. Nathan's chest swelled with pride as he looked at her. His fury dimmed slightly, not because his anger was gone, but because Jessica's strength reminded him that she didn't need saving. She needed honoring. But Victoria? She wasn't done yet. You think you can humiliate me?" She hissed, her eyes darting around desperately. "Do you know who I am? My family." "No one cares who you are," Nathan interrupted, his tone final. "Because from this night forward, the world will only remember you as the woman who struck another in arrogance and begged for mercy when truth struck back." The words sealed her fate. The restaurant's doors opened again, and this time paparazzi surged inside. Somehow word had spread beyond the diners. Flashbulbs lit the room, reporters shouting questions. "Mr. Williams, what happened here? Jessica, are you all right? Who is this woman?" Chaos erupted, and in the middle of it all stood Jessica, her hand still resting lightly on her husband's arm, her head held high. Victoria covered her face, realizing too late that her carefully built reputation was crumbling like glass. The night wasn't over. The humiliation wasn't complete. Because outside, the world had already taken sides, and the world was with Jessica. The following week, the world still buzzed with Jessica's name. Her image, calm, unbroken, her hand resting against her cheek, had become a symbol of strength. Across social media, artists painted her, activists quoted her, and ordinary women whispered her words like armor. "I don't owe you an explanation." For Jessica, the attention was overwhelming. She had never sought fame. She was content with her quiet life with Nathan, the love they shared away from cameras. Yet now she found herself standing in a place she hadn't chosen, admired by millions, watched by strangers, and whispered about in every corner of society. And at the center of that storm stood the woman who had struck her, Victoria Hartwell. Victoria had not been seen in public since that night. Her mansion gates were shut, her phones unanswered. But the world had not been kind to her silence. She lost contracts, lost invitations, and lost the carefully polished shine of her reputation. The tabloids called her the fallen heiress. Business outlets called her untouchable. The public called her arrogant. And Victoria knew. There was no rebuilding without one step she had dreaded. She would have to face Jessica Williams. The chance came on a crisp Saturday morning. Nathan and Jessica had been invited to a charity event in downtown Los Angeles, an event they had considered skipping until Nathan reminded Jessica, "You don't have to hide. Let the world see you as you are. You've already won their respect." Jessica agreed quietly, though part of her longed for the calm of home. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and fresh flowers. Guests arrived in shimmering gowns and tailored tuxedos, their smiles polite but their eyes always drifting toward Jessica. She carried herself with quiet confidence, Nathan by her side, his hand resting gently at the small of her back. Whispers followed her, but they were no longer sharp with judgment. They were reverent, curious, admiring. And then, the room shifted, because Victoria Hartwell entered. She was not in silver gowns this time. She wore black, simple, unadorned, almost humble. Gone was the sparkle. Gone was the crown of arrogance. Her face looked pale, her eyes heavy with sleeplessness. Gasps rippled across the guests. Phones rose discreetly. Everyone knew what this moment meant. Victoria walked slowly, her heels softer on the floor than they had ever been. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at Nathan. Her eyes were fixed only on Jessica. When she reached her, she stopped. For the first time in her life, Victoria Hartwell lowered her gaze. "I came here," she said, her voice unsteady, "to apologize." The ballroom hushed. The chandeliers seemed to stop glowing. The air itself held its breath. "I was cruel," Victoria continued, her throat tight. "I was arrogant. I struck you when I had no right. I let my pride blind me, and the world has punished me for it. But nothing they've said to me matters more than what I did to you. I humiliated you in front of everyone, and I—" Her voice broke. She swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "I beg your forgiveness." The silence was heavy, all eyes fixed on Jessica. Jessica studied the woman before her, the same woman who had raised her hand in arrogance, who had spat insults like poison, who had sneered at her presence. Now she stood bowed, stripped of pride, trembling in the face of her own downfall. Nathan shifted slightly beside Jessica, his jaw tense. His instinct was to protect her from this woman, to refuse her apology on Jessica's behalf. But he said nothing. He knew this choice did not belong to him. It belonged to Jessica alone. Jessica's heart beat slowly, steadily. She thought of the slap, the sting on her cheek, the humiliation. She thought of the whispers, the laughter, the cruel words that had pierced deeper than the hand ever could. But then she thought of Nathan's eyes, steady and filled with love. She thought of the strangers who had written letters of admiration, the women who had said she gave them courage. And she realized something important. Victoria could not take her dignity. No one could. It had always been hers. Jessica took a breath, then spoke softly, her voice carrying across the room. "I forgive you," gasps echoed. "But," Jessica added, her gaze steady, "forgiveness does not erase what you did. It does not mean I will forget, or that others will forget. Forgiveness is not for you. It is for me. Because I will not let your cruelty live inside me. I will not carry your poison. I choose peace." Her words struck harder than any slap ever could. The ballroom erupted in applause. Victoria bowed her head, tears slipping down her face. For the first time she understood. True strength was not in power, not in wealth, not in arrogance. True strength was in dignity, humility, and grace. And she had none of it. But Jessica Williams did. After the event, as Nathan and Jessica returned to their car, reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. "Jessica, how do you feel after forgiving her? Was it difficult to let go? What do you want the world to remember from this?" Jessica paused, her hand still in Nathan's. She turned to the cameras, her face calm, her voice steady. "I want the world to remember that dignity is not about wealth or status. It's about how we treat each other. Last week, someone tried to take mine away. But dignity cannot be taken, it can only be surrendered. And I will never surrender mine." The words traveled farther than she could imagine. That night, as she and Nathan sat quietly together at home, Jessica rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you think it's over now?" she asked softly. Nathan smiled faintly, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "It's never really over, love. But you've done more than enough. You showed the world who you are, and nothing can ever change that." Jessica closed her eyes, her heart at peace. She had not chosen this storm, but she had walked through it, and she had walked out stronger. Victoria Hartwell disappeared from headlines in the weeks that followed. But Jessica Williams remained, not as a victim, not as merely a billionaire's wife, but as a woman who had stood tall when the world tried to bow her. A woman who proved that sometimes silence speaks louder than fury. A woman who reminded the world that dignity, once held, can never be stolen.